Hi everyone, welcome to the Heal the World Summit. I'm Marissa Lovett, and I'm going to be talking about working with the spirits of the land today from a shamanic and animistic perspective. So while I'm waiting for any of you who may be watching live or on the replay, I just want to just tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Marissa Lovett, and I own Celestial Tree. I'm a shamanic practitioner and coach. I've been a shamanic practitioner for about 20 years and a coach for about 3. And I help people, mainly women, who are trying to connect with the traditions of their ancestors. They often feel called by the spirits of their ancestors, and they'd like to learn shamanic or animistic skills in order to create better lives or bring back the traditions of their ancestors, which includes very much relating to the spirits of the land. Hey Kirsten, how you doing? So, I think, and also you can find me at Celestial Tree on Facebook, Animistic Earth Medicine, which is a group that I own and run with my sister Kirsten. And also, the two of us run a Patreon called Shamanic Earth Medicine. And I'll speak a little bit more about that later. So I want to get started with talking about working with the land spirits. So I'd like to ask for a little help. So if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, just go ahead, close your eyes, and I'm going to ask for some help now. So let's start. So I'm going to be talking about land spirits, which basically are, and I just want to let you know 2 things. First of all, because I have a lot of information, I am going to be looking down at some notes. And secondly, if I don't see a question or a comment that you do in the live, I will be checking back frequently to see if anyone asks questions or comments later. So I just want to, please feel free to ask questions or make comments or, share in whatever way you like. So I'm going to be talking about land spirits and getting to know them, which are basically, in some traditions, either powerful nature spirits, evolved ancestors who return after death to be in the world, in nature with us, so that they kind of merge with a part of nature. Or sometimes in some traditions, the ancestors, if there's a crisis going on, might return as life-giving rain in a drought, or as food if the crops are doing badly, or if the hunt is not going well. The ancestors might actually return as a life-saving aspect of nature. And so basically I'm talking about all of that at once. So I come from the animistic tradition, and animism is an idea where everything that we see around us is conscious, is a being, and it's our job to learn how to relate to it in a good way. In many animistic traditions, including shamanic cultures, there is something called the 3 worlds. There's a lower world that can be accessed through like an opening in the ground if you're journeying, and that has to do with ancestors sometimes and the spirits of nature, like plants or animals, like the guardian spirits of those things. There's the middle world that we live in every day that we're conscious of, where the spiritual energies there are the spirits of individual rivers or individual trees or things like that. And then there is the upper world, which is where the evolved beings exist. These could be deities, angels, teachers, many different powerful helping evolved spirits, including evolved ancestors, may be found there. Now, this is a little bit complicated because not every culture has only 3 of them. Some people have, more than that, but usually there's the basic organization of 3. the three worlds, lower, middle, and upper world. And what was exciting for me once I began to learn about this is I began to connect with traditions, which I'll talk about a little later, where there are places in nature that are considered to be portals to these three worlds. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So I believe that we are hardwired to communicate with nature. Our ancestors had to do this in order to find food, to recognize the patterns in nature, to keep safe from impending storms, and basically to track animals and plants for food and for other reasons. We also had to communicate with nature when we were migrating to know where a good place to be would go. So I believe this is natural for all of us. It's just that many of us have sort of forgotten how to do it. So hopefully this will kind of get us back into thinking in this way. So my animistic journey began when I was ill, and I sort of by accident discovered that when I went to a local bayou near my home, I felt like someone had flipped a switch. I had a lot of health problems. I was feeling bad physically. I couldn't handle my empathic gifts like many of you. My gifts were sort of out of control. And when I would go to this bayou, I felt like the presence of something that was helping me. I felt my best. I felt like all these things that seemed to be a problem suddenly got turned into like a strength. And so I began to realize that there are places in nature that can do this for people, that are sort of like a mini sacred site. And I like to think of these as power spots, because they don't always work for every single person, but every person has some of these places. And I began to create a relationship with this power spot where I didn't know anything that much about animism or shamanism. I didn't have many teachers at that time. So I began to leave like little, like sort of mini offerings, like a little bit of my drinking water, or somehow in a ceremony I had learned to drop flower essences on the ground. And I noticed that when I did this, the spirits of this place really began to communicate with me, and I would leave with a powerful blessing. So right there, that's one of the really important and beautiful things about nature spirits, is that they really help us to understand the sort of the bridge between our world, the ordinary world reality, and the spirit world, the other world. That there are places where these things come together, and there are activities that we can do that enhance these two things coming together. And I believe that one of these things is offerings. Also, the three worlds can be accessed through some of these places. I began to eventually be introduced to the Andean path. And when I did, I was taught that in the Andean path, one of the ways you connect with the other world is to go to specific places that are connected with each level of sort of the worlds, the spiritual worlds. And also these places can help us manage our energy bodies and even help enhance our psychic abilities. So I began to basically connect with these places, and anyone can do this. If you don't like to journey or do other shamanic trance states, you can use whatever divination method is the most powerful or helpful for you. Just use that one, and you can start to begin a dialogue with these places. Once your own body has helped you discover a power spot, a place where you consistently feel at your best because there's power there, and your body knows this. Once you do that, then it's very easy to begin to tap in with your abilities to divine and communicate with these places. So I just want to give a little bit of an experience of how my psychic gifts were switched on by being at this power spot, this bayou. So I also follow the Mayan calendar, and some of the days are considered to be a little more powerful than others. So I went down to this bayou, and I left my very simple offerings, and I was just standing there. And as I did, I could see that the moon was reflected in the water. Now, many of you know how powerful moon on water can be. And as I was standing there, a great deal of information about this day sign and about the calendar came into my being. It almost felt as if there was a powerful spirit coming from the bayou that was teaching me, not just through words, but through a sensation of just communicating this wisdom. So that was when I began to really take this place seriously, not as just something that was good for my health, but that it had a presence there, a being that I wanted to be able to connect with. So it's also possible to dream or journey with intention to the spirit of a place once you've located one of these power spots. And so I'll give you just a short example of how this worked for me. I intended to have a dream about this place, and in my dream I met a native man with a crown of feathers on his head, and he was sitting by the bayou in the place where I normally left my offerings, and next to him was a stone that had ridges on the sides. And when I woke up, I found out that the crown of feathers that he had was very much like some of the drawings that the Spanish made of some of the pre-Columbian native people that lived in my area before the conquest and before settlers showed up. And also, I went to the bayou and I found a stone with ridges on it like the one in my dream. It was a different color, but it looked the same. So what this helped me to realize is that it was like a little bit of a confirmation when you can actually get something out in ordinary consciousness to line up with what you're seeing, dreaming, or sensing. That's always a good sign in animistic practice, meaning that the two worlds are sort of coming together. So after I had that experience, I felt much more connected to the place and much more like I was ready to try to really interact in a better and more direct way. So at this time, I was actually studying the Andean path, and I was being taught something about the energies of the land. And I began to learn that in many different animistic culture, different places have energies, spiritual energies that are associated with them. Now, each place is unique, so you have to interact with each place, but there are sort of categories. So for example, springs in the Andean world can be and in other worlds can be an entrance to the lower world. They also can be used for divination in some places, or even healing. Caves can also be an entrance to the lower world, and may also have a connection to the ancestors. Rocks can be thought of as sort of like antenna to the spirit world, and sort of might bridge the middle world with the upper world or the lower world. Rivers sometimes are thought to have a connection to the stars. Sometimes they line up with the Milky Way. Other times, like the Ganges, is thought to have been a goddess from the stars who came down to create the river for the people. So it's like a little bit of a connection between stars and water. And mountains, in some traditions, can very much connect to the upper world, or sometimes rainbows. Then there's something like man-made, like gardens. Because of the farming traditions all over the world, there are strong traditions of nature spirits, little people, fairies, elves, whatever you call it, that are strongly connected to the fields. In some traditions, you actually do ceremony in the fields to enhance this connection. And even in Europe, in Ireland, there are strong connections between these little people and ancestors. One farmer in Ireland that I saw a YouTube video of actually had an actual burial mound from either the Bronze or Iron Age on his property. So when he was talking about the fairies, he was also sort of talking about the ancestors as well. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about the guardian energies of a place. Because when you want to interact with a place, especially if you're ever going to do earth healing, you want to really get to know the guardian spirits, or at least the most powerful nature energy in your area. You can get to know it by shamanic journeying. You can get to know it by through mediumship, by having the spirits come to you. You can pray with tobacco. You can rattle. There are many, many ways to get to know. You can work with it through a bundle, but it's important that you have some way to have a telephone line between you as an individual with your helping spirits and the helping spirits of the most powerful thing in nature in the landscape where you are. Now, some of you have it easy, like I do. I live next to the Gulf of Mexico, so it's pretty obvious that the Gulf of Mexico is the most powerful nature spirit in my area. Or you may live next to a mountain, or next to a river, or next to a desert or a forest. So obviously, if it's that dramatic, you know what the most dominant, powerful nature spirit in your area is. But some of us don't live in places like that. And so you have to maybe go in through the elements and see what the dominant element is in your area. Is your area very marshy or like a wetlands area? That might be a water element. Is it rocky or sandy? It might have a strong connection to stone. Is it very windy there? It might be connected to the wind or air element. Or do you have a lot of hot springs or even volcanic activity or lava or things like that, which might make you more into the fire side of things? So sometimes if you don't have a dramatic natural feature near where you live, you can tap into the elements as a powerful mediary between you and your helping spirits. And what you need to do is to kind of pay attention to these outer things that you can see with your eyes, but also tap into your own inner sense, the same part of your body or your spirit that lets you know when you've reached a power spot. That also can help you tune into what the most powerful nature energy is in your area. So sure, trust your eyes, your senses, your ability to track what's going on in the land, but also trust your inner senses, because they'll also tell you what the power is in that area. And it'll also help you to begin to connect with the evolved ancestors who have partnered up with the powerful things in your area. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. So you're going to want to meet and interact with these helping spirits that are connected to these places. And the power spot is a great place to start, because once you develop a rapport with these places, other natural energies in the power spot will come to your aid. For example, because I left so many offerings and did so much work at this bayou, when I had a healing, a Peruvian healer came to my home and did a healing on me. One of the spirits who showed up to help was the spirit with this bayou. Another time, I was feeling uncomfortable, maybe feeling fear, or even urinary discomfort, like actual physical discomfort. And there are mangroves, which are plants that actually have roots that can go into salt water, that were at this bayou. And the spirits of this mangrove actually took all the symptoms away. Another time, I was marching with a group of people, activists, who were trying to stop a pipeline from being built in such a way that it would hurt Lake Okeechobee, which is, in my state, the big aquifer. So as we were marching, I was very nervous and angry and outraged, and I was trying to shift into a better place. And the spirits of the red mangrove came to me, and they helped open my heart so that I wasn't afraid anymore, and I didn't feel angry, and I could actually look with compassion on the other people who didn't like the fact that we were protesting. So that was like a real blessing that sort of came out of nowhere from just that basic practice of going and leaving offerings at this power spot. It's also very helpful when doing actual earth healing to connect with a local power spot, because these places, they sort of are ways to communicate with the health of the entire area, or the entire neighborhood at least. And they can tell you sort of what's going on and what's going right or what's going wrong. And it helps give you something besides your own inner senses, which sometimes can be thrown off. So it just gives you another layer of, of clarity to go through this, especially if you're going to do something like earth healing. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about basic practices that get you sort of into the beginnings of earth healing. And I'm just going to take a breath here and see what time it is and see if I have a question. That's amazing you found a stone at the power spot that matched the one from your dream. Yeah, it was really cool that that happened. And those are the kinds of experiences that if you have doubts, that you're sort of waiting for the universe to come through so that you can see the truth in what you're doing, that there really is a spirit there. They really do want to communicate with you. You really can trust them. Because ancestors of the land can be a little tricky in the sense that while it's good to honor them, not all of them want to communicate with us, especially if they're not blood ancestors. So when you have an ancestor of the land that actually does want to communicate with us, it's special. And it's good to have a way to sort of confirm that. So one of the things that's really powerful in earth healing is the idea of raising energy. And one of the powerful ways to do this is with sound. There's some beautiful YouTube, I guess, songs or whatever, written by native people about actually singing to water, singing to the land, as a way to sort of honor and send love and like raise energy, especially when these places are under threat from development, exploitation, and even the collective unhappiness of the people that are walking on the land, or the collective suffering of the animals and plants that are on the land. So these things, this sound can be very powerful. Another way to use this power, the power of sound, is to either rattle or drum. So I'm going to demonstrate a little bit about using a rattle to raise energy, the way I do it. It's very simple. I like doing it between the solstice and either Imbolc or the solstice and Lammas, depending on where you are right now. If you have something you can make sound with, you can do this along, or just watch it and then do it when you're comfortable. The important thing you want to do is you want to match up the feeling in your bones, in your body, with the sound of the rattle. Because when you start to connect with the heartbeat of Mother Earth, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it in your bones. And even the sound will change a little bit. So I'm going to demonstrate this, and I'll talk you through it a little bit. Okay, now I can feel the heartbeat a little bit. And I just keep going with that until I can feel it stronger and stronger in my bones. Till it's almost like a sound. And then, you won't be able to see this, but I'm going to go above my head. And as I do this, the energy, the light just starts coming down a little bit, so that I can almost feel the sun getting brighter. And then I bring it back down and just wait until I feel that in my bones again. So, as you can see, this is very easy to do. It's very simple. It's not complicated. And you can use anything to be a rattle. People have used natural things like a branch with leaves on it, or a gourd with seeds in it. People have used a box of Tic Tacs for the not so natural. So really, there's a bunch of different directions you can go in with this. But the important thing is to use sound to connect with your body, your bones, and the energy between earth and sky. And as you do this, these energies between earth and sky will communicate with you, and they'll get stronger, and you'll start to feel into what's needed. And sometimes this is the only thing that's needed. just to raise energy between earth and heaven a little bit, just to keep that channel strong, or to do what we can to keep that channel strong. So now I want to talk about the elements. In animistic traditions, the elements are thought to be ancestors many times, ancient ancestors. In the Andes, the mother spirit for the wind is Wairamama. And one of my teachers once said that we honor wind as the first force that gives us life, because we breathe, and breath is very important in that tradition. In other traditions, fire is the oldest ancestor. And so you might refer to him as grandfather fire. And everybody has an affinity with one of the elements. Some people can call wind to them. Others can call rain easily. Some people can make a fire when other people can't. When it's very wet in Florida, it rains a lot and it's very misty, and my partner can make fires when it's hard to make fires. Some people can do magical things with stones and have an affinity for crystals. So it's really interesting to find out kind of which element you tap into and work with that a little bit. That's part of your magic as a person on this earth, connecting with these ancient ancestors. And the flip side of it is that we can address them with respect. Sometimes they have names, like Wairamama, which is like the mother spirit of the wind. But other times, you can just talk to them the way I'm talking to you now. When I was taught to do a fire ceremony, one of the things we were taught to do was to talk to the fire, to address the fire, to honor the fire, and ask for a blessing. Also, we would leave offerings that could burn until the fire began to change color or change energy. And that was kind of our way of our signal of knowing, okay, now we can work with the fire. The fire's ready to talk and ready to listen. So it's very powerful to know whether you're connected to a particular element, or to know the element, the strongest element in the place where you live. So right now, we're just going to do just a little bit of drumming. Just enough to sort of connect you a little bit with a light trance state. And we're just going to set an intention. And the intention is that you will easily go in with your helping spirits, either an animal, a powerful angel, your teacher, whatever is powerful to you, whatever is safe. And you'll go in and either ask this being or ask the elements, which element are you most attuned to, or which element is strongest in the land that you're living in. And you're going to use this information when you do your healing work or do your honoring work. So if you're in a place where you're not driving or doing something where you have to pay attention, close your eyes, call your helping spirits to you, and we'll just do a little drumming. And when you hear this, that means it's time to come back. And I'll do that 3 times, so you'll know. Okay. So go ahead, call your helping spirits to be with you. Our intention is to go in and find out which element is strongest, which one we attune to the most as individuals, or what's the strongest element in your local landscape. So now I want you to begin to come back and rub your hands together. And I like to place mine over my heart or over my solar plexus or over my legs. And this is just an easy way to say, I'm back in my body, I'm here, I'm not in the other world anymore. Because with the drumming, it's sometimes easy to go into a light trance. You're not going too deep with a journey that quickly, but you can it just enhances your ability to contact the spirits a little bit. So if you feel comfortable sharing, then please feel free to share whether you connected with a particular element as your sort of the elemental ancestor that you connect with, or whether you went in and asked about the dominant element that blesses your landscape where you live. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about actual earth healing. One of the reasons why you go ahead and make these relationships with the elements, with power spots, with spirits, guardian spirits of the land, is because these beings are going to be very helpful when you go in and ask for help when things go out of balance. In shamanic and animistic traditions, it's important to do some kind of divination before you do earth healing. The reason why is because most of the time there are things going on that you just don't understand. Like they're not, you can go in and think, oh, the land needs a soul retrieval or the land needs an extraction. These are shamanic ceremonies or animistic ceremonies. But until you actually do a divination and let the spirits tell you what is needed, there's all kinds of things that could be needed. And it's almost never what you think it is. At least this has been my experience and the experience of people I've seen do earth healing. So that's why it's very important. For example, my sister and I work together to do earth healing sometimes. And there was a really bad hurricane in our area a couple of years ago. And the energy of the land felt very depleted, and the energy of our house felt very depleted. So when we did our house clearings, they just weren't working. They wouldn't hold. So my sister did a divination journey where she went in, and we thought we were going to work on the spirit of the house. Well, it turned out something completely different happened. She went in and met with a spirit that had to do with working with the trees and nature in our local neighborhood, in our area. So that had to be addressed before anything could happen with our home. So that's just an example of the kind of thing that can happen when you do a divination journey, where something completely different than what you think is going to happen happens. So it's rarely as obvious as what you think it will be. The other thing that's important is protection and discernment. It's good to have at least one helping spirit. It can be a guardian animal spirit. It can be a teacher. It can be an angel. It can be a deity. It doesn't matter. They have to be reliable. They have to have agreed to partner with you. They have to be consistent. But once you have one that will protect you, it's easier to vet or interact with the other ones, because this is the middle world. And as I said before, every spirit that you run into in nature isn't on your side. Some of them can be quite toxic. There can be some really heavy energy going on. There's also the collective heavy energy that unhappy people and the unhappiness of animals and plants can create. So when you go in to do earth healing, it's really important to have a powerful helping spirit that will not only help you to protect you, but also helps you to understand who you want to interact with and who you don't. Because sometimes beings will come up to you that you've never met before, like the thing that happened to my sister, and if you have a helping spirit that you trust, you can work with them. Otherwise, it may take some time to build up a relationship and have some trust. So you also have to be willing to learn from the results. It's okay to go in and use the gifts you have to make a difference. I believe in this. But you have to be willing to learn from the results. And if things don't work as well as you hoped they had, to go back in and ask, what went wrong? What did I do wrong? Or what did I not hear right? Or, that kind of thing. Or what needs more of. For example, I asked for a dream to help. What should I do to help send energy to the Gulf of Mexico, which has been very, very stressed with pollution. We've had oil spills and other terrible things. And I was given a dream where I was shown something to do that was very simple, that I was to ask my helping spirits to send energy to this visualization. And once again, my sister kind of helped. We worked together to work out the right way to do this. We often do that with earth healing projects. And we started doing this sort of visualization with our helping spirits. And slowly over time, the energies began to improve. And there are times when I'm doing this, I try to do this almost every day, and I can feel when it's working, it's a little harder than other times. And usually when it's a little harder, that means that the Gulf is stressed again. You may also be guided with something like this to send energy to other places that you didn't even think of. That's the kind of unpredictable thing that can happen. And then later you get some kind of confirmation. It's helping, it's not helping. Because we sort of are in a double bind doing this kind of work. On the one hand, it's the helping spirits that do the work. And we know that. So you try not to brag about it because you're not giving credit to the beings that are doing the work. But on the other hand, you have to create the relationship with the helping spirits so that they can work with you in a good way. So you're both sort of responsible and not responsible at the same time, which I guess can sort of be complicated, but it's part of understanding the dialogue between the other world and this world. The other thing is that sometimes less is more. If large numbers of people are doing something, that's a way of creating power. In other words, if a lot of people are praying, or a lot of people are drumming, or a lot of people are praying with tobacco, or a lot of people are doing visualizing, one of the ways that you create power is to have large numbers of people with a focused intent. That's one of the reasons why ceremonies work. So if a crisis is happening, especially if you're in the path of that crisis, as you're moving to safety, one of the things, the sort of animistic ways or shamanic ways of praying, is to talk to the elements. And this is where your relationship with the element that you're most drawn to or that is powerful in your community can really come through and become a very helpful relationship. And that is, this is a prayer that I've seen a version of this that Evelyn Riestick teaches, the shamanic teacher. Pat McCabe, who's a Diné Navajo woman, talks about this. But it's a very simple way of praying. You just talk to the storm, the fire, the earthquake, whatever that's coming. And you say, you talk to it as a being, I know you have to do your work, but please, I'm asking you, keep my home okay, the ones I love okay, and my community okay, and your community may include trees and animals. And what's amazing about this is that this works. Ordinary people have been able to dialogue with the elements in this, I feel, respectful way, and the elements create sort of miracles. One very dramatic instance of this was a woman, an Andean woman who was crossing a river that was very flooded. It was very dangerous. It was very scary and life-threatening. And there's a way of praying in the Andes where you take 3 coca leaves that are 3 different sizes and put them together and blow into them. And she did this with her prayer, and the river somehow calmed down so she could get across. So that's just one example. There are people who have prayed with tobacco, and that seems to work. There are people, one woman was in a hurricane, and she works with wind, and she has this ritual object called a wind whistle, and she blew into the wind and prayed, and the winds which were coming towards her home shifted and were less problematic for her and for a lot of other people as well. So these elemental beings, these storms and these other events do have consciousness. They are beings. They do work with us. Ultimately, if you want to work in a very powerful way, it's important to understand the ancestral helping spirits, not only of the land, but also the ones that interact with these elements in the best way, or to understand them as ancestral helping spirits, because you're asking them for a favor. And many times when I'm asking them for a favor, I try to promise something in return. Like I've worked on going and cleaning up places to make my relationship better with a body of water. Or I worked on, I agreed to study a book that has to do with spiritually working with the wind as a way of asking a storm to not do damage in my area. So there's always like an exchange of energy in some way. This can take the form of offerings or ceremonies, but it can also take the form of service. So if you're more of a service person or an activist or on that side of things, you can build a really powerful relationship with helping spirits and with the land spirits just by devoting or dedicating some of your activism to these elemental beings, these powerful beings in your location. So I'm pretty much winding up. I just would like to let you know that I'm offering a free gift with you. This is a PDF with a short video that covers 3 simple practices. The first one is locating the power spot that I talked about earlier. The second is working with an ancestral helping spirit that's old enough that they remember the pre-Christian traditions and are healthy and well. It's very important to pick one that doesn't have a lot of psychic baggage, because it's good for you as an individual. And the third is how to work with outdoor ancestral shrines in nature. Even if your ancestral helping spirits just say, I like this tree, so leave offerings at this tree. Or you can create something in your move to do that. But the ancestors often just like a place in nature. So that while you may have an altar within the home, it's also powerful to have one outside, because the ancestors and the land kind of go together. Also, in the PDF, there's a link and an invitation to join Kirsten and my free group, Animistic Earth Medicine. If you would like to join, please answer the 2 challenge questions so I know you're not a robot. Also, Kirsten and I also offer very inexpensive trainings in shamanic skills through our Patreon, and Shamanic Earth Medicine. So there's a link to that also. So I just want to say thank you very much. Thank you so much for watching. Hey Susie, how you doing? I really loved sharing these simple practices for working with nature spirits and your own helping spirits. Once you have these relationships worked out, your ability to work with weather in a powerful way, I think, will be enhanced greatly. Diana Paxson gave a talk. She's a Norse heathen, and she was talking about the Norse idea of Ragnarok, which is like the twilight of the gods kind of thing. And she was relating it to climate change. And she said that right now, what we really need is to cultivate people who have strong relationships with nature spirits and who can dialogue with the weather and help us to live with the weather in a good way and help us understand how to work with it. And I think that by you doing this, you can enhance and have a more effective way of working with land spirits, not just for weather working, but to enhance your own life and to enhance your ability to change your life to live in a more environmentally conscious way. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who came today. I'm just going to thank my spirits for their help. Thank you.